all set to begin.
Okay, well, it being 6:02, I call the Town Hall School Admin Building Committee meeting to order. I'd like to read this first. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town Hall School Admin Building Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Members of the public who would like to participate in the meeting via Zoom can do so by clicking on the link below. Members of the public who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558-8656 and entering the meeting ID 819-3572-5499. Then press the pound sign and press the pound sign again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on their telephone keypad or using the raise hand function on Zoom. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. In the event that despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access, we will post a record on this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. I'd like to take a roll call of members present. George Hooper, Chair, here.
Diane Allen, Permanent Building Committee, here.
John Doherty, Finance Committee, here.
Paul Melorani, Permanent Building Committee, here.
Kevin Kyra, Wilmington Board of Selectmen, here.
Paul Ruggiero, Wilmington Public Schools, here.
And I see Jack Holloway's here. Jack, I think you're muted. Can you hear us? Yeah.
George, we see, I don't see that he's connected with audio.
Okay. I don't know if anybody can kind of help him out with that. All right, first item on the agenda, if everybody's had the opportunity to review the minutes from December 15th. Do we have any questions?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of
Second.
December 15th, 2020.
Okay, and we got a second?
Second.
I got the sound now.
All right, there you go, Jack.
Hey,
Hey, good, good, good.
Happy New Year.
Jack,
All right, so we had Kevin Kyra making the motion. Was that Paul Melorani with the second?
I think it was John Doherty.
Yeah.
Was it?
John Doherty?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 George, just a reminder, you need to do roll calls when you're taking votes.
Okay. All right, I, George Hooper, voted the affirmative. Diane?
Diane Allen, Permanent Building Committee. I vote in the affirmative.
John Doherty votes affirmative.
Kevin Kyra, yes.
Paul Melorani. Yes.
Paul Ruggiero, yes.
Jack? Okay. All right, I'll quickly read this out. In our past annual town meeting, the town voted to approve $955,000 for a feasibility study schematic design for our new town hall school admin building. The first task of this committee for the project was to identify an owner's project manager under Mass General Law 149. Any public construction over 1.5 million requires an OPM. On October 28th, 2020, the town advertised a request for qualifications, an RFQ, which was due on November 19th. A total of 15 firms responded. Each firm responded was reviewed by committee members at our last meeting. We came up with a short list of firms to be interviewed. At tonight's meeting, 2 of those firms will be presenting. The Vertex Company at 6:30 to 7:30 and Colliers International from 7:45 to 8:45. You guys should have all received this along with the questions that we're going to be reviewing. That's the next item on our agenda. Have you all had the opportunity to review the questions?
Yes.
Yes.
What I'd like to do is assign these to individuals. We can have more than one. We have the 10 questions that are here. I will start with the first one for myself. I don't know if there's any particular ones that anybody had liked that wanted to ask. If not, we'll just go down the line and assign them. I'd like to keep from asking, having the one person ask 2 questions in a row, so we can kind of just go through them and prep.
I'll ask the second one.
Paul Ruggiero, second. Third. Diane,
Yep, I'll take it.
fourth.
I'll take
Do
it.
it. Oh, okay.
John,
That's fine, Paul.
Who's got it? John's got it.
John Doherty. Fifth, Paul.
I'll take 5.
Kev, that leaves you 6.
Okay.
Who is sixth? I'm sorry, Kevin?
Kevin Kyra. Jack, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, do you have the questions?
I'm trying to find them now. Was that on December 29th?
I think it was closer to the 15th or 16th, Jack.
Yeah,
15th or 16th? Town Hall School.
I can send it to you, Jack, if you want it, if you want number 7.
Okay, great. Send it to me, my email.
I'll
okay.
just text you a picture of it. How's that?
Great.
All right, Jack, you are number 7. I will take number 8. Everybody's already been assigned one, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 9. Actually, you know what? Paul, you're gonna take number 9?
Yeah, I'll take 9.
I'm gonna take 10. I'm gonna forego. I think that's the last one, so it's a basic one.
Who's got 8? I'm sorry.
Number 8 is
George has 8.
Is
open.
George.
It's
You,
gonna-
George?
I'm gonna leave it open. Paul, would you like that?
I'll take it. I don't mind.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna do 1 and 10.
Okay.
1 and 10. Okay.
I have 5 and 8. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct.
And each sheet should have ample space for notes. If anybody needs to go down.
Judge, you want us all on mute when the interview begins, other than the person asking the question, and then,
Yes, please.
I mean,
Attaboy.
I don't know if anybody has follow-up questions to the question, but other than that,
Well, during the question or the interview process, if something comes up and for clarification, you can, unmute your mic and feel free to ask them to elaborate or to explain their answer. One of the things that we have to be careful of, when we did this for the senior center, we noticed the time frame. We're only allotting an hour for each firm, so they come in and do their introduction. So we do not. We want to kind of hold that to a certain amount of time so we can get our questions asked. And we don't want to dwell too long on a particular question unless there is clarification that's needed.
okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Has everybody also been doing their reference checks? The ones that were assigned?
Yeah, a lot of people were away last week.
Yeah.
Found a lot of people taking time off, so.
Funny, all the ones I called the town managers and that were in the office. I think they were the only ones. They were the ones answering the phone. So, yeah, I did a few. We'll hold off on those. Those will be our next meeting. I was just wondering how everybody was making out.
I have a call into everybody. Heard back from 2 people so far. But just to clarify, I'm calling just those on the reference list that they provided, or do you want me to go outside that box, so to speak?
Well, you know, I looked at some of the projects that they did, and typically I find that references that are provided by people are usually they're positive ones in some of their
Right.
best projects. But if they've listed other projects that are in that presentation, then you can feel free to give them a call. I have done that on a couple of on my end, and I've talked to facility directors, building commissioners, as well as town managers. So that would give me the big picture instead of just trying to stick with somebody that they told me to call. So yeah, feel free to pick a project that you think is similar to what we're doing, or that you think that has an interest in this.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you can get 4 to 5, that's what I did. I went through, and once I felt I had a good picture of the firm, similar to what we did on the last project. So the first firm that's going to be coming up is Vertex. They're a pretty good sized company. We'll let them in at 6:30. Does anybody have any questions on the process that we're doing so far? We have a few minutes, so before we
George,
get
what was
into
my
it.
question? What number question was it that I had?
You have 7, Jack.
Yeah, you're number 7,
There you
Jack.
go. I got the questions on my laptop, but I haven't been able to click on the thing to get on the laptop.
Did you get the text I sent you, Jerry?
What?
I just sent you a text with a picture of the question.
Okay, I got a picture of the question here, number 7.
Are you okay with that? Or do you want me to actually copy it to an email?
No, it's fine. I got it here.
Okay.
And like I said, Jack, don't be afraid to ask kind of a follow-up on it if you don't think they answered it correctly.
Right.
You can ask them to elaborate. If we start to fall behind, I will kind of facilitate the process and kind of jump in and ask it to move along. Jeff, was there anything that, and I forgot to mention, that we had done on our last process? I know we have a few minutes here. You're on mute, Jeff.
Huh?
I'm talking to Jeff.
Oh, so one of the things I would just be mindful of is when they have an opportunity to offer their opening statements, just to be mindful of the clock, because I think we had, if I recall, the last go round, at least one of the firms spent a pretty good amount of time in the intro, which really kind of squeezed the group in terms of time you had available for questions.
Okay, I will remind them that they only have an hour and that we do have a list of questions to ask. I would expect them to interview and then to go through their process. I think 10 to 15 minutes should cover a lot of that.
Right.
On the first one, George, Vertex, is there only one gentleman coming in, John Lemieux?
I'm not sure. That's the only one that I seen responded on the email.
Oh, okay.
I can answer that question. There's 4 individuals joining us from Vertex.
Okay.
Actually, technically 3 from Vertex and 1, I think, from someone they work with. It's John Lemieux, Steve Kirby, Laurie Sove, and Brian Jarvis.
And that's pretty much the team that would be for this project.
Hey, George, can I ask the four companies that were picked for the senior center, are there any of the same that we selected? I know P3 was one, Collier's.
Yep, Collier's and P3.
Okay.
Yeah, Vertex did not apply. I believe CHA did on that.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
they
but
did.
not Vertex.
CHA did apply?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
They were not chosen. They made it through this one.
Did they make the cut? They did not make the cut.
No,
Yeah.
the P3 was the OPM chosen for the senior center.
No, I know. Yeah, I knew P3 was chosen. I didn't know if they were one of the CHA was one of the 4.
No.
Okay.
Will we have any issues with buffering with pitches on here and 4 or 5 people? I know sometimes there's an issue. John, will we have any problems?
No, I mean, the pictures usually it's the preference of your Zoom client. You can certainly it will automatically choose the speaker. If it's in the speaker view, you have the ability to pin the screen on Zoom if this is someone you want to view exclusively. It's usually up to individuals who are joined to the meeting and what you're seeing in your Zoom client.
Okay, because I know sometimes if there's too many visual pictures, it sometimes has a problem. At least we didn't encounter that.
Are you on a Windows PC?
Yeah.
You are. You should be fine if in the upper right hand corner of your screen there should be a view button.
Yeah.
If you keep it on speaker view, you should be all set.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, could you give me those names again besides John and Steve Kirby? You said there were 3 from Vertex?
There are. There's another individual. 1 second. Laurie Sove, Soave.
Laurie, Soade. Okay.
V is in Victor.
Oh, V. Okay.
And then there's also a Brian Jarvis
Yes.
joining them, and that individual is from Compass. And that's the entire group for Vertex.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe that Compass Group is part of Vertex. I think they were acquired.
Just a comment with regard to question 8. I think that's the one where the question is posed about multiple projects working simultaneously. Paul, it might be good if you could kind of work in the idea that there are also multiple projects competing for the same sites, if these companies have ever been in that kind of a situation. And George and I, when we went through the questions, we were trying to capture as many key points. And I think, that's certainly somewhat unique for Wilmington, the fact that you've got 2 projects running concurrently and competing for potentially the same sites.
Okay, I'll work that in.
Good point, Chair. Our next meeting will start 15 minutes earlier, so it'll be a quarter past instead of this time. We just allotted something for the questions in case somebody had an issue or couldn't get the questions.
Jeff,
Yes.
did you mean question 9 for that, for the site selection?
All right.
I was looking at question 8 where it says, describe your firm's approach to, in past experience working with a town that has multiple projects possibly being developed simultaneously, senior center and a town hall school admin.
I hope I have the right set of questions here.
The ones that Chris sent out to you.
I don't think I have the right set of questions.
Yeah, number 9 says once chosen, the OPM will assist hiring an architect.
No, I don't have those.
Going to email that to you or?
Can you forward them over to him, Jeff?
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Does Jack have the right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Jack. You
Might
have
as well
the
send them to Jack too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul sent me a question 6 about, describe a difficult situation you've had on a project. That's 6?
No, it's 7.
You're
No,
going
that's
to
6.
7.
No, I have 6. That's the one I have.
Yeah. Jack,
Yeah.
you have number 7 that you're gonna be reading.
7 is, one of the most important decisions that needs to be made. That one?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
sites. Yeah.
That's the one that says about the site selection.
Yeah,
Right.
we already have a
Number-
site selection, don't we?
No,
Right,
number 8.
that's the question for the site selection. So is that where you want that answer, that question about competing for the same sites?
No, that
Number
one's
7?
the next one below. That is number 8. They are close, you know.
Yeah, I never got these questions.
Well, I think this came out, Paul, when she sent out the
Agenda.
minutes, the minutes and the agenda. Yeah, interview questions.
Judge, you want to read the questions quickly so that people see if they have the right questions?
Sure.
I know
Absolutely.
we're 3 minutes away or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still don't have a copy. Can somebody forward me a copy of them?
I thought Jeff said he was just forwarding you a copy.
First one is, as an OPM, what criteria do you feel is the most important in the selection of an OPM for our project? All right. Number 2, tell us why your firm is best suited to provide an OPM service for Wilmington's proposed town hall school admin building, and describe the qualities that give your firm the edge over the competition.
Oh.
The next, please describe your firm's experience in public outreach for getting information out to residents of Wilmington and making a compelling case to obtain support for funding this project. Describe some of the more serious mistakes that occurred during the planning stages and cost estimating process. Does everybody is following along? Do you need to?
Yeah, yeah, if everybody has those, then you must have them all.
Right. Your number 8, please describe your firm's approach and past experiences working with the town that has multiple projects possibly being developed simultaneously, the senior center and town hall school administration building.
Paul, did you, the only email I have for you is your state one. Do you get that one, or what's your other email?
You can send it to P. Melarani, MELARAGNI @gmail.
Okay.
Good thing you're down the list a little, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
George, should I go ahead and let these individuals in?
Yeah, please, we don't want to cut into their time. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Evening.
Right?
Evening.
Is that everybody from your firm?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is George Hooper. I'm the chairman of the Town Hall School Admin Building Committee meeting.
Hi, George.
Tonight will be your presentation, and first thing to do would be to a roll call of your staff that's present. We have about 10 questions that the committee would like to ask you. So you have an hour here. I just ask you to be mindful of the time, to leave us enough time to also ask you questions.
Absolutely.
Excuse me, George, would you like to introduce the committee members first to them?
Yeah, we'll go through all that. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll take a roll call of the committee members. Diane, I'll start with you.
Okay, Diane Allen, Permanent Building Committee.
Paul Melarani,
Paul Melarani, Permanent Building Committee.
John Doherty,
John Doherty, Finance Committee.
Paul Ruggiero,
Hi, I'm Paul Ruggiero with the school department.
Kevin Cairo,
I'm Kevin Kyra, a member of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen.
and John Holloway.
Jack Holloway, Permanent Building Committee.
Tonight, our recording secretary is Tristan Dixie. Thank you, Tristan. Okay. All right, John, will you be leading this off?
Yes, please, George. I'll be leading it off tonight. I have with me Steve Kirby, Brian Jarvis, and Lori Suave. We have a brief introduction slide. We have about probably 18 or 19 slides total. Knowing you probably wanted to hit a good series of questions, I think it'll take us about 20 minutes to go through them all, and leaving plenty of time for your questions and our answers.
Very good.
So when you're ready, I can start to share.
Okay.
All right.
John, do you have their information?
They're sharing on their own.
Okay.
All set, George?
Yep, ready to go.
All
We
right,
can see you
great.
fine.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. Again, my name is John Lemieux. I would be the project executive for this project. I've got over 27 years experience in the building industry, registered civil engineer in the Commonwealth, got my MCPPO certification. Basically, all I've done for Vertex for the past 12 or 13 years is OPM work, and I've been with the firm for 20 years. I've sat on a couple of building committees, and so having said that, I understand the commitment and passion that goes into you all wanting to see a successful project for the town of Wilmington. So again, thank you for giving us the opportunity, and I'd like to turn it over to Steve Kirby.
Good evening. My name is Steve Kirby. I would be your project manager if we're chosen for this project. I have over 32 years of experience in construction management. I've been with Vertex a little over 14 years. I'm a civil engineer. I have my mass construction supervisor's license, my MCPPO certification. I have extensive experience with municipal buildings, public buildings. Before I was with Vertex, I worked for a general contractor who exclusively did school work. I was with them for over 10 years. Brian?
Brian?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Jarvis, also Senior Project Manager with Vertex, over 16 years in the construction industry. The last 12 doing nothing but OPM work. Extensive experience with municipal construction projects ranging up in over $100 million. I'll be involved during the design phase, specifically with constructability reviews, document reviews. Currently, I'm the Senior Project Manager on the Natick Middle School, 180,000 square foot middle school in Natick, Mass. First day was today. Chapter 149A experience, if that's a delivery method that might be suitable for this project, as well as past senior project management experience on a variety of municipal projects, fire stations, police stations, senior centers, and including Norwood Town Hall. Lori?
Thanks, Brian. Laura?
Thank you. Hi, good evening. I'm Laurie Suave, and I am the construction site manager at Vertex. I have over 25 years experience, and the vast majority of that has been managing projects at different seats at the table. My training was in architecture. I've had an architecture degree 30 years ago, and I've been a project manager, a site project manager. Right now I'm on a project up in Pentucket, a $118 million middle high school. But my majority of projects have been public buildings and academic buildings, a lot of summer slammers, as well as, getting that September deadline in. I'm also MCPPO trained, and I think one of the great things about the Vertex OPM, site OPMs, is the diversity that we have, bringing other experience to the table. So I look forward to hopefully working with you.
Thank you, Lori. So just a little bit about the firm, just to hit the high points. We were founded in '95. We are an ESOP, so everybody you talk to is an owner of the firm. Back in 2019, we really we bettered ourselves by acquiring the Compass Project Management company. So you may have heard of them, another significant OPM firm. We also come to this with a couple of things that we think sets us apart. And one of them is that, for a lot of our early days when the company was founded, and still to this day, we've got a significant resume of experience with surety projects. If you've ever heard of a project that a contractor's been terminated, a town has let them go for whatever reason, we're one of the go-to consultants that the bonding company industry, the surety industry, uses to kind of go in and figure out what happened. And you say, well, wait a minute, I don't want that stuff to happen on my project. And no, we agree. But we've gotten to see a lot of what negative issues can impact projects, and we've used that experience over the years to help make sure that our OPM clients don't see those same things. And lastly, we are your project team. So the folks that you have on this call with you tonight, on this interview, would be the ones that you would be working with. And just to talk a little bit about our breadth and depth, obviously the folks that are in navy blue are the folks that you've just met. But again, one of the things that we think sets us apart is that we have this great set of other services that we do in-house, not because we want to sell them to you, but because they're fantastic resources for all of our public OPM clients. So when the set of drawings is complete and Brian talks about doing that constructability review, we have in-house folks that do civil design. We have in-house folks that do structural, air quality and hazmat, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. We also have in-house digital and IT services. And we've really, in the last few years, started to really kind of work with those folks and sell their services, that value to other clients. So when we talk about a COVID world and we talk about a lot of project meetings and things online, it's great to have, IT capacity in-house, whether we're talking about social media pages or just, electronic product to help inform the community about your, about this project. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get further into the presentation. We have a lot of bench strength, and we're also familiar with the area. We've completed projects in your immediate surrounding area to you, Burlington, Billerica, Chelmsford, Drake. We're actually currently working right up the road on the Tewksbury Fire Headquarters right now. So we're just going to talk about a few of our town hall projects, and I'll kick us off with the Cohasset Town Hall. Cohasset is a project that we started about a year ago, had our interview, and then went down into lockdown. So every meeting since then has been largely, aside from a couple of walkthroughs for designers, has been virtual. Right now, we're currently in design development. The scope of that project is the demolition of an existing two-story addition that was badly done in the 90s, and the replacement with a new two-story addition and renovation of the original. Also of note is this project previously failed at town meeting with a different project team, different architect, different OPM. We've really been able, I think, to turn it around, and people are excited about it. And again, we've had to talk about COVID-19 design considerations, and I'm sure we can talk a little bit more about that as we move along here. But right from our first meeting, this was a virtual, virtual project get together, and we've had to talk about issues in design of separation of staff, HVAC considerations, how much space is too much space, not enough space, is it wide open? It was originally wide open, and now all of a sudden we're back to partitions to give people their own spaces. Talking about types of filtration, types of UV systems for HVAC. So really a lot to think about, for the COVID period, and then for just for pandemic related things that we really haven't dealt with. So it's been, I don't want to say exciting, but it's great to see these things actually be talked about. Steve?
Yes, another project we had was the Foxboro Town Hall. That was a newly built town hall on the existing town hall property. We left the existing town hall operational in the front of the property, built the new $6 million construction budget town hall in the back parking lot. It was determined that the existing building just was not suitable to be rehabbed. It was always prone to flooding the way it was set on the property, which caused some structural damage. Essentially, the bottom level of the building was unusable. We completed that project in 2018. We had to coordinate allowing the existing town hall to be operational and have some parking while the construction was being built. Wasn't that large of a site footprint, but it got done, completed in 2018 under the designer of LLB out of Rhode Island.
Similar to Steve's discussion on Foxboro was Drake. Drake was completed before Foxboro. Again, brand new town hall built right behind the existing town hall, probably about 15 feet separating the buildings at one point. The back of the old building was kind of right in front of the pillars of that new one that you see right there. Again, included acquiring some adjacent parcels of land. Really what was great about that is we were able to save some money for the project in taking a couple of properties, one abandoned, one pretty run down. We're able to save the town some money and using that as the site office for both the contractor and the OPM. Great, not huge dollars, but a great way to be able to take project funds and use them more for building something new as opposed to renting trailers. And then ultimately helped with the move coordination and management as well. And, I think, you've seen our proposal. We have a lot of town hall and administrative space experience. We're very comfortable with the programming needs of these types of facilities. And if you have any questions about any of these, we can certainly talk about them at the end of the presentation. But now we'd like to move on to, kind of when we talk about our strategy and plan for your project. So where do we start? And obviously where we start after being hired is to procure a designer who has experience with similar municipal projects of this size and scope. And when we talk about your choice of a designer, it's really important. And there's a couple of key aspects, and not just prior experience, but also who are they bringing to the table? Who are their sub-consultants? And when we've seen issues on projects having to do with the designer, what's the capacity of those sub-consultants? As an example, if somebody's using a small structural firm, does that structural firm have so much other work right now because they're an MBE, WBE business that they might not be able to, dedicate the time they need to Wilmington's project? Can the design team meet the timeline that you've put out there? And also important, has the sub-consultant team worked together before? It's very rare these days to find a designer that does everything in-house. Most of the time it's a series of sub-consultants, a different structural, a different MEP or fire protection firm, different code consultants. There's 3 different firms right there, that have to work together, and everybody has to make sure that they get their documents together, and that those documents are coordinated. And we'll talk a little bit about the challenges that come with that a little bit later on. And then once we have that designer, the designer's on board, we really start talking about programming for you, programming the solution to answer the following questions. And some of those things that were laid out in your master plan report. But, obviously things change, times change, and we want to make sure they're taking a fresh look at all the specific problems that the town has that we're trying to solve by building this new building. What do you need? What would you like to have? And the difference there between needs and wants is important. Some things that are necessary for the program have to get in there. Things that you'd like to have, well, boy, we'd like to get as many of those in there as long as they align with the budget. And then also too, are you building for the future? A lot of times, after you get over the kind of resistance of a project of this size, well, okay, if we're going to build this, are you building it for the future? Do we have enough storage space? Do we have enough space for expansion? Those are all things we want to talk about. And then ultimately, are all the desired services that you want to have included in this building, are they in that program? Were we able to get veterans into the building? Were we able to get WCTV into the building? Those things we want to make sure we answer early so everyone's on the same page. And again, budget, how do the answers to all these questions align with budget? And as we're talking about programming, we know we've at least got 4 sites to look at. We're going to have Brian talk a little bit about site selection and then options discussion. Brian?
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so the next step as you move through feasibility schematic design is looking at the potential sites that you have available, making sure that all the sites in town that are feasible are at least looked at and ruled out, so that you're creating a transparent process so that the community understands that all the options were looked at and you guys are coming up with the best solution. Quickly looking at sites, do they work alone for the town hall project? Are they being coordinated? Do they work for both the town hall or a senior center if that's a preferred option? Is a site something that you already own, or do you need to purchase? Again, working with that budget, what type of impact would that have? Accessibility, both from accessibility of pedestrians and accessibility standards once you get onto site, but also accessibility to community members. Is it in the center of a town? Is it far out from town where everyone sort of needs to drive to it? What's important to Wilmington? Does it have availability of necessary utilities? Are they already there? Is that something that's going to save you some money during the project, or do we need to bring brand new utilities in for everything to a site that's maybe back off a main road somewhere, which would obviously drive up site costs? And then just the general topics of site selection, size, topography, geotech. Is there anything that would create undue risk or possible problems for a project? Is the size big enough to house the program space that you come up with in the first place, like we talked about? And does it work well for possibly both projects? And then once you get those sites kind of figured out, we typically put together matrices like you see here. These are actually some live matrices updated recently for one of our current projects. We do this on all of our projects, and we think this is a good way to graphically and visually show not only the building committee to help you make choices, but also the community, to show people that it's a transparent process, that you looked at a lot of different priorities and considered criteria that were priorities for Wilmington, and rated those particular sites, and then eventually your different solution scenarios. So what you see here is an example on the left of looking at different sites and kind of voting them which sites meet certain criteria as far as physically being able to hold a building. And then what you see on the right is kind of a color-coded example of, once you've narrowed down your sites, you're going to have multiple solution concepts. Is it an add renovation perhaps? Is it 2 new buildings? Is it 1 building? Is it a single-story building? Is it a 2-story building? How do those fit, and how do they lay out on particular sites? And then what are the criteria of those different options that are important to Wilmington, and how do you prioritize those? You know, a site might be all green, meaning it's advantageous in a lot of categories, but it might have 1 red, you know, criteria that just is a non-starter for the project, and it rules that out. But this is something, these are tools that the committee and the community at large can look at and say, it's very obvious what, you know, what criteria were used, and it's very obvious what options had the most benefit for this project. And it's something that you can use as a tool to both help explain the project, and also as a record document that you did your due diligence. And like I said, this is something we do on every project, and we think it's a necessary step as we move forward in design.
Also important to note, and thanks, Brian, also important to note that that evaluation criteria, we would work with you. It's not our project, it's your project. And we want to make sure that, you know, what's the single most important thing? You know, we've worked with communities where cost is number 1, no question about it. You know, other communities, it's, you know, historic preservation. Now we have to keep the certain facade of the building, you know, and different communities, different committees. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to give input to that, and that there's buy-in at the end of the day, because the worst thing that can happen is to go through this process and then have people unhappy. What you want to know is that everybody's had fair chance for input. And, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about communication and schedule in a bit, but that includes letting the community know what's happening with this process and kind of where things are trending. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a few minutes here.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing to that. I mean, the goal at the end of the day is that everyone might not necessarily agree with the option that was picked. Very, very rarely do you get unanimous decisions, but everyone can agree that the process that you went through was open, transparent, and actually did all the due diligence that you needed, and they can feel comfortable it was the right process.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, John.
And then once that, you know, once those decisions are made, you know, and we start to, you know, we've got a schematic design. We want to make sure that the cost and the, you know, not just the construction cost, but the total project cost is at a point where it's reflective of the current market conditions. It's reflective of, you know, current escalation, COVID-19 impacts, and depending on timing, to make sure that that estimate is accurate and something that we can rely on. You know, as I mentioned, you know, back on the first few slides there where we talked about our org chart, we also use an outside cost estimator. We like using a third party. We use PM&C. We've used them almost exclusively on our projects, which provides us, you know, a chance to be able to do comparative estimates along the way. We typically don't do one at schematic design. We usually wait till design development, but that allows us to say, okay, if the designer's estimator has a cost opinion that is X, let's see if our estimator has the same result. Because if not, that can really kind of let us know, okay, is there a problem with how things are being designed and laid out? You know, why did these two estimators see things differently? And it allows you to have that reconciliation, to go to sit down together and say, okay, why are your plumbing costs so much higher on this project? And before we get that thing out to bid and find out that there's something that's going to, you know, bust one of the budget line items. But, you know, moving on from that specific construction estimate, you know, our job also for Wilmington is to provide you with a comprehensive total project budget to make sure that we carry all the necessary costs. And it's not just construction, designer, and OPM, but it's all these other smaller things that are important. Also, we want to make sure you have realistic contingencies for unexpected items. You know, we would say at a minimum carrying 5% for a construction contingency, plus any adjustment if, let's say, we end up choosing a site that's got ledge on it. We'd want to carry a little bit more money in that budget for additional ledge just in case. We would do our best to make sure the designer defines where it is. Sometimes the best site can be very rocky. In Ashland, we're dealing with a new public safety building that has a tremendous amount of ledge, but it was the best solution for the town for centrally locating, centrally locating the facility. Much like Brian, to Brian's point, when the matrix was looked at, location won out, and yes, ledge was there, and it was, a slightly red looking item, but ultimately there was so much other green that made it the right choice that the town decided to go with it. But then also we want to make sure that we carry money in the budget for a lot of these other things: geotechnical surveys, hazmat, construction testing, FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. All those things that if we picked up your new building and shook it, everything that fell out of it has to be bought also. And we want to make sure that we budgeted monies for those things early in the project, so everyone understand. And we track this budget on a regular basis, to make sure that, the things that you want, if we can get them in and fit them in, yes, absolutely. But first, we're going to make sure that all the needs are taken care of. And why is this so important? Is because people always remember that first number. I can't stress that enough. The first thing that comes out of this committee, if you say it's going to cost X, and then it comes out, and it's somehow maybe a little bit higher because we jumped the gun and went to public with it too soon, people will always remember that well, it went up. Here we go again. So we work with you very tightly to make sure that we control the information, control the message, and we don't release that information until we know we've been through it thoroughly, and that everybody on the committee, has bought into what it is and the level of the order of magnitude we're talking about. And then lastly, for the strategy and plan, we talk about timeline, and we want that timeline to be realistic. Construction projects are about time and money. We just talked about the money, and time is just as important because it sets expectations. So, we put together a brief little schedule here. I know that the goal here is for the town to be able to go to town meeting sometime in 2022 calendar year to be able to, vote on the next phase of the project. Again, just sitting down and putting something to paper so that you can see the process flow. And what I want to highlight is really just, that it isn't just about, design. It's also about letting the community know what's going on. So you can see, having a community information session sometime after you talk about site analysis and ranking of alternatives for those sites. You have another community meeting when you talk about, what's the building going to start looking like? What's that program? What's the layout going to start to look like, so people can know what's going on? And then another community meeting after, after you finally establish that total project budget, so people can understand what it's going to cost. Doesn't mean you only have to have 3 meetings. We're all about, providing as much information as is necessary to get out there, but just to show you that, got to remember the community in all this, because at the end of the day, it's everybody's money. So moving on from there, our overall project management approach, just to highlight a few things, these are things we think are important to the, project process for your building. Design coordination, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. We see issues come up when designs aren't properly coordinated. And Brian will talk a little bit about constructability here in just a few minutes. We want to spend enough time looking where you can't see. What does that mean? What's underground? Is there a building on the property that, that's chosen that needs to be taken down? Spend a little bit of extra money up front doing additional surveys and really trying to understand what's going on. Again, that site in Ashland right now did a very extensive mapping of the ledge. And when the bids came in, we were pleasantly surprised to see some very favorable numbers. And one of the GC that won it basically said, I have not seen a ledge profiling done to that level of detail. So while it may have cost the owner more money, money out of pocket up front, add some zeros for what it saved them, because it took the risk away, took the risk from the GC, who instead of just throwing money at it said, wow, they've really put the time into, understanding what it's going to take to, to execute this project. Also to continue, as I mentioned before, needs versus wants. We really want to make sure that you're getting what you need and getting as much of what you want as as you can afford. And then also too, as it was said in the RFQ, there's going to have to be some great coordination with the senior center, for this, because maybe we're sharing a site, maybe we're not. And there's going to have to be, good communication and collaboration with that group. You know, as an example, we're doing something similar in Ashland right now. Not so much about sharing a site, but it's about getting 2 projects approved at a special town meeting. So we're working with the town and with the OPM, who's doing the school project. You know, it's a combined almost $100 million worth of work, but both projects want each other's project to happen. You know, and that's just the approach that the town took, that to put them out there at the same time. So we would want to make sure that, you know, obviously that coordination and collaboration with the folks on the senior center would be transparent and you know, very thorough. And then, you know, again, team approach sounds a little cliche, but, you know, we're all in this together, you know, and if at the end of the day it's a miserable ride, it reflects poorly on everybody. So we want to make sure that from the beginning, you know, we are all on the same team. And that, again, that includes the senior center project as well. We'll maintain the master project schedule. As we said, you know, schedule is really important. You know, we want to track that for you, for your benefit, but also once the contractor's on board, we want to make sure that they are tracking where they're supposed to, because, you know, when we promise a building X amount of months, we want it to take place. We're also big supporters of a web-based project management software, even more important in these times of COVID, so that you as a committee have access to those things that are out there regarding files, submittals, RFIs, so that you can feel, touch, and see that project as it's going up, even though you may not be able to step foot on the project physically due to the restrictions that are in place. And again, I think what's important here, you know, when you talk about hiring your OPM, you know, what's really important is you can see us as somebody who, one, you're going to be able to stand to work with for the next couple of years, but 2, that we're going to give you realistic feedback, and that ultimately we're not just going to yes you. You know, I joke sometimes that, you know, sometimes we're the paid pessimist. You know, we're here so that if you have an idea and, you know, from our experience, it might not work, we're going to talk that out and understand it, but we're going to give you benefit of all of our combined years of experience, you know, to say, hey, this could work, that might not work, but, you know, we're here to give you realistic feedback to any of those requests. Another thing that's important to projects is limiting exposure to claims and changes. You know, at the end of the day, it's the design and your budget. You know, we want to make sure that we're not impacting that, you know, negatively. We're going to talk to you early on in the DD process about how we're going to deliver this project, whether it's design, bid, build, or CM at risk. Also, during the design process, we're going to talk about constructability reviews. And Brian, if you could talk briefly about what constructability reviews are.
Sure. And what we do during the design process at different stages, design development, and then 60% CDs, 90% CDs, is we take the design documents and we go through them ourselves, both internally with our in-house team, as well as using a team of third-party consultants. Again, just kind of back-checking the design team. We have the ability to bring in engineers or commissioning agents to review those drawings to make sure that there is a complete and tight set of drawings as possible, again, to mitigate those unforeseen costs down the road, you know, in change orders where something was missed or not coordinated correctly in the drawings. We look at it with a contractor hat. We have vast experience in the building industry. You know, how would we build the project? You know, how would we stage a project, phase a project? What might cause cost? You know, where the contractor might throw money at it because things are unclear, as John mentioned with the ledge example. And then we also complete page turns with the owner throughout the process. So again, it's making sure that you're getting your needs taken care of, and those things are in the drawings, and the ones that we're able to put in there, those are in there as well. And that what we've talked about in meetings actually make it into the drawing. Sometimes you'd be surprised how many times architects have meetings with you and then the drawings come out and something didn't get captured. So our goal is to go through with all the user groups that need to use this facility, that, you know, they're checking things off, that everything has been captured. It's also an opportunity to talk about value engineering, or where we could possibly, you know, save some money or put some things in a priority list that we could possibly add later if the money works out correctly. We could look into alternates as a way to manage bid results if the budget is tight. And then we do things like having the documents reviewed by town council, especially the contract, making sure that we have the protections in place, again, to mitigate those risks, to set up a project as tightly as possible, so that we have the best project possible. And then the one last thing that we bring to the table is we bring our experience on these types of projects from a change order perspective. We know where change orders creep up. We have jobs and jobs and jobs of change order history to go back and say, yep, this always comes up on this project. Did the designer adequately address this? we've worked with this designer before. This was a change order on their previous project. Did they update their drawings? Sometimes they don't do that. They don't go back and implement those changes. And we look at that as best as possible. Again, that fine tooth comb to mitigate as many problems before we get to the construction phase as possible.
Brian, and I think just one other point, the COVID point contract documents, when we talk about delays, we've been very lucky that a lot of our projects were deemed essential, but a few were not, and those jobs closed, and only because of some tight, contract structuring did it protect the owner from some six-figure claims that are out there on one job in particular. So it's really important that we get that feedback from town council, as a part of a review of the front end of the project, the contract, general conditions, to make sure that Wilmington is as protected as possible. And then, when we talk about claims and changes, we talk about conflict a little bit. So Steve, if you could just talk about those items, and then we'll move to construction and we'll wrap it up. Steve?
Excuse me. Yes, unfortunately, there's very few, if any, projects that go without some kind of conflict during the project, whether it may be at design and probably more likely during construction. But the goal is to address, all the issues as they arise as soon as possible with all the parties, whether it's an owner, the designer, or the general contractor, and try and get everything out on the table so they don't really back up. We want to stress accountability with all the parties that are involved. We've had issues with designers that have sort of fallen off, where we've had to step in and give them help, give them a little push over the finish line. We've had issues with designers where they might have something that doesn't quite work as per their design. And I've got one project where the electrical engineer is actually stepping up and absorbing some of the costs that have occurred for that. But we brought the issues up when they came up and got them resolved to get the contractor to continue on with the work. This job is undoubtedly going to be over $10 million, so we will have pre-qualification. That process will weed out, some of the potential problem that we may have with certain contractors pre-bid, so we don't get tied up with that if they become the low bidder. And we also want to use every remedy that's available to us, whether it's our own history, within our own company, our own internal discussions, your designers' knowledge and discussions, but also, if we have to contact the surety and to get something moved along, we don't have a problem doing that. It may not be a default situation, but sometimes if the surety steps in, you certainly get a reaction from the contractor. We also rely heavily on the Attorney General's office, their bid unit, for vetting out some of our opinions prior to presenting them to contractors.
Thank you, Steve. And Lori, if you could just talk a little bit about the construction phase, and then we'll talk about communication and wrap it up. Lori? You're on mute still. Lori, you're still on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. So I was noting there's a lot of bullet points on here when we get to the construction phase, but as John and Brian had mentioned earlier, the whole team is still involved in the project, and we're still continuing to do the constructability reviews through the submittal process and all of that. But I think the main points that I want to mention are, that we're not just a clerk of the works on site, we're actually managing the quality control, the change orders to make sure that we can circumvent any issues that arise. Me personally, I like to think of, just communication, clarity, and closure is like the three most important things, because once we get to construction, it's moving really quickly. So it's important that communication is really clear, and that people can make decisions as they need to as things arise. Yeah, so we're there, and typically also other contractors usually run the architect, owner, and construction meetings, and we at Vertex like to run those meetings ourselves so that we can really manage the process a lot better.
No, thank you, Lori. I think it's important to note that, we're there to be your eyes and ears. All of you have full-time jobs. Your project becomes our full-time job. And then lastly, community support and communication. At the end of the day, community support with a project like this starts with great project communication. Part of our job is to help you raise support for the project. Ultimately, we want to inform the project stakeholders. This is a lot of money we're talking about here. And how do we do that? You maintain an open dialogue and invite the public into the process. Even with, COVID-19 restrictions for right now, communication is more important than ever. We've got Zoom meetings, you've got social media content, we've got our discussions at whether it be town meetings or info sessions for officials or info sessions for residents, video updates for local cable. I mean, if it's out there and it's a possibility, we've probably done it on a project. We want to attempt to address concerns in the development of the construction program. So if people are concerned about a particular site, a particular type of building, a particular part of the program, let's bring that up, because much to the point of Brian's point about the matrix, at the end of the day, you want someone to at least felt that they were heard. And ultimately, maybe it didn't go the way they had hoped, but at least, we were respectful and responded. And then once the project is greenlit, at town meeting, how do we keep you, informed? Again, similar info sessions, as Lori talked about, we've got meeting minutes that are kept at the design level and at the project level. We've got monthly reports, and there's a little snapshot of one that we did, we worked on for another town up on the upper left there. Bottom line is we're comfortable putting as much or as little content into the documentation that goes out that you as the committee want to share. We've had some very limited exposure on some projects. Town of Southborough, why I show this one, Southborough posted every single document that was ever presented at a public meeting. So that's kind of the other end of the spectrum. But again, it's all public work. So at the end of the day, we can do whatever works for you. So as I wrap it up, again, we would love to work on this project. We love being able to assist, clients in solving these kind of problems. This isn't our first rodeo. We've done specific, similar, projects such as this. Significant experience with town hall and admin projects. A lot of project experience, over $25 million, both in the design, bid, build method of delivery, as well as the CM at risk. And I think what I'm most proud of, is a responsive and attentive team that you have here. At the end of the day, we don't get a report card like the DCAM evaluation for the contractor or for the designer. All we get is the phone call that Wilmington makes to Tewksbury or Wilmington makes to West Newbury and says, how did Lori do? How did John do? And that's it. So we're only as good as how we leave you at the end of the day when we hand you the keys. So again, you have, everyone here's commitment because we're all owners to the company. And with that, I turn it over to you for your questions.
Great. Thank you very much, John, Stephen, Brian, Laurie. Great job. Good presentation. Went a little longer than I think it originally wanted it to, but you were touching on some of these points that we're going to be asking. So
great.
I'll start off with the first question. I know you guys are an OPM, but and you're going for this, but what criteria do you feel is most important in the selection of an OPM for our project? Can you tell us with your experience?
Yeah, no, George, at the end of the day, what's most important is, can you see yourself working with us, for the extended future? At the end of the day, if you can't stand the way that I present or how I collaborate, it's about a relationship here. We're a partner for you for this, through hopefully to successful completion and handing you the keys, and then even later at the 1 or 2 year warranty walkthrough. We're in this for the long haul, and it's really, everyone has to have the experience. So put that aside for a second, and it's really all about, the personal relationship. And, do you see yourselves, when we hang up the phone, when you talk tomorrow or next week or whenever, can you say, yeah, I could see ourselves working with that group? That's what I think is most important.
And I'll add to that. I mean, something that we pride ourselves on. I think all the OPMs that you interview are going to be able to say they do a good job of, tracking schedule, keeping track of budgets, giving you a monthly report type of thing. I mean, they all should be doing that. What I think sets us apart is is our ability to work with you, kind of what we say outside the construction fence. As John mentioned, you all have full-time jobs. The people that are going to be working in town hall have full-time jobs. How well are we able to work with them as well as you to do the programming, to get some of those systems bought out, to get those systems coordinated with the designer? There's a lot of times that the designer is not worrying about your IT system in the building, your security system. That's not in the design. That might be something the town handles. Who's helping coordinate all that? That's us. We come in the design phase, making sure that those things are done. We're also managing that in the construction phase, where we're meeting with the IT director in town, sitting them at the construction table, working with the electrician, making sure that at the end of the day, when you go to use the building's exactly what you want. I mean, we always say we don't design anything and we don't build it, but at the end of the day, if it didn't go well, it's our fault. So our job is to make sure that when you move in, there are no issues related to that.
And I think communication is key to the project. And I always say there's 24 hours in the day. We don't work 9 to 5 and then we're offline. Whatever it takes, whatever time of night, something needs to go out so it's there for the next morning. That's what we do. It's our project. It's part of work ethic. It's ultimately your project, but for the time being, it's ours, and it, we keep it close to our heart.
Thank you. Paul Ruggiero, next question. You're on mute, Paul.
I'm mute. I'm mute.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
Very good presentation, but you actually hit on my question at the end of your response to the previous question. So in the interest of time, we can go on to, I think Diane has the next question.
All right, Diane Allen.
Diane Allen, Permanent Building Committee here. I guess my question is, could you describe your firm's experience with public outreach for getting information out to the residents of Wilmington and making a compelling case to obtain support for funding this project? We all talk about it's all our taxpayers' dollars, and
yeah, no, and it's a great question. And I mean, and in every town it's a little bit different. We had projects in Pentucket where we had, Pentucket's a regional school district where we had 3 different towns. So it was 3 town meetings, 3 boards of selectmen, 3 FinComs, you name it. And, kind of to Steve's point, whatever we need to do to get out there, whether it's, info sessions are huge, especially now with a project that's going to be starting in the middle of the pandemic. You want to keep people up to date, and you never want to hear, well, I didn't know about this. So even if we provide, info sessions that are not well attended, people can never say you didn't do it. And I think part of the benefit of the Zoom, which, has become a way of life right now, is that people can go back and watch it. A lot of times there would be these meetings and info sessions that weren't videotaped. So there is very little track record of, hey, well, what was said? Now everybody goes back and watches. So and that's really a great thing. We've had success both with online. We've had success with friends groups, kind of a group outside of the building committee that is for the project, very, very typical with a school project, and having a group that, can raise money for mailers, because obviously you can't use project money for those things. So that's been successful as well as a good online presence, having that person who's committed to answering those questions when the horrible Facebook story goes up, and being able to refute negative comments, to be able to answer questions with, someone from the project team either doing it on your behalf or providing the town manager or whoever the designee is from the selectmen to say, yeah, no, this is how the project's going. Here are the facts of what's going on right now. Here's the name of the contact person of the OPM. Here's the name of the contact person of the designer. We want to make sure we address those things early. And listen, no question is too small. I mean, we did a project in Littleton once where it was a fire station in a historic district. It was their headquarters. And at the end of the day, there were 4 or 5 neighbors in the historic buffer, to the station. Inviting them into the process and letting them have a say and let the designer hear about what their concerns were really paid huge dividends, just to be able to feel like, they were heard, their opinions were valued. And even at the end of the day, if you couldn't give them what they wanted, because a lot of times those are requests. Well, can you just do this or just do that? At least folks know that their opinions are valued and have been listened to. And because it's everybody's money at the end of the day. And that's, you know, you can't run a job like this by vote, you know, by town vote. You know, once it's approved, you kind of have to give their you know, give their hope, you know, their faith to you, the building committee, to drive it, and the project team that's hired. But ultimately, you know, we're here to help raise that support, answer as many questions as we can, just so that when folks are checking yes or no, they feel like they know what they're talking about. Because if they get to the ballot and don't know about the project, there's some people you'll never reach, but you really want to reach the ones that had questions, the ones that had tried to get a question answered, got it answered, and then, you know, when they're talking to their friends, they can say, you know what, they dealt with me pretty above boards. You know, I don't like the answer, but, you know, I think they were fair, and at least I understand why they're doing what they're doing. And if we do that, you know, you can have a pretty successful project.
Okay.
Can I just follow up with that really quickly too?
Well,
So,
actually, in the just for the
sorry.
time, we do have some questions
Okay.
to go through.
Okay, that's
Diane,
fine.
do you feel or they've answered that question?
Yes.
Okay, fine. All right, I'd like to move on to the next one. John Doherty.
I have a two-part question. Describe some of the more common and some of the more serious mistakes that occur during the planning stages and the cost estimating process. Explain the procedures or approach that your firm takes to eliminate these issues.
Sure, John, thank you. So I think we touched on it a bit already. I mean, I think some of the biggest issues that we see in project drawings is lack of coordination of subconsultants. Because as I said, the designers come to this project with multiple subconsultants on their team. They don't do very much in-house. So their deadlines come in and all of the stuff is, you know, comes back at once. And that architect is supposed to weed through it all and make sure that it all matches up. You know, it can be something as simple as, you know, the plumbing drawing shows a roof drain at 4 inches, yet the pipe in the ground on the civil drawings is 6. It's not that it's the end of the world. We can get that answered, but it's time. You know, the issue is that question has to get asked, has to get answered, and we want it to be answered early and found early if we can, because otherwise it doesn't get found until the day the hole is in the ground, the plumber's there trying to connect the pipes, and they go, oh, wait a minute, mine's 6 inch, that's 4 inch. You know, what do we do? And it can stop things. And then you hear that word delay, and we never want to hear that word delay. We want to make sure we weed out those things as simply as possible. You know, you've got mechanical drawings that have all sorts of air handling units and those sorts of things. Do the electrical drawings have circuits for them? Something simple. Is there power running to it? And that's the kind of thing that we try to weed out through that constructability process to make sure that, you know, tab A goes into slot B. Well, is there a slot B in the drawing? You know, and assume nothing. Assume nothing. And especially in the world of filed subbidding, where the trades own really only what's in their spec, nothing can be assumed. So as an example, the electrician only owns what's in division 26,000. And if it's not in there, they don't own it. Even if you and I would both say, well, yeah, the electrician should be putting that together. If it's not in his drawing specifically, he doesn't own it. And that's a problem. And it's just, we want to try to weed out as many of those as we can by going through that process. And again, that process is iterative. We see it design development, kind of high level. We get into 60% construction drawings, more detail, 90% before they go out the door. Did they catch everything? And at the end of the day, they may not agree with our comments, but at least we've had the opportunity to have a question and answer session about, hey, why did you do that this way? Because as Brian said, we're not designers, but at the end of the day, we are builders. And we want to make sure that if we disagree on something, we at least have had the dialogue to say, okay, I know why you didn't do this. I don't necessarily agree with you, but it's your design. Okay, or vice versa. If we really feel strongly about something, that's when we grab you guys as the owner and say, hey, we really think this is a mistake doing this way, and we'll let you know that. And if we have to have a get together on that and inform them as the committee, we'll go ahead and do that too.
Great, thank you.
Hi, guys. Thank you. What a great presentation. I know we're under the gun. We got about 10 minutes left and about 6 more questions. I'll be quick with my question. Talk to me about change orders and what you guys would do to limit change orders.
So Paul, it's a similar, we hit it on a tiny bit. Hopefully we're weeding out the change order potential as part of the constructability review. Also, too, we want to make sure when we do the front end of the specifications and when we talk about markups, allowable costs and change orders, to make sure that we limit, we want to be fair, but we don't, Steve and I can't tell you how many times we've gone through front ends of projects and the front end is silent on what the allowable markup is. It says reasonable. Well, let me tell you what, the town of Wilmington, what they think is reasonable versus what the contractor thinks is reasonable are two very different numbers. And that can be 10 to 15 to 20% difference. So we don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that we're kind of setting those things out. Look, at the end of the day, too, anybody that comes in and says there'll be no change orders on your project, they're lying to you, okay? There are change orders, but the goal is we want those change orders to be things you want. Owner ads, at the end of the day, you've got some extra money, let's go ahead and put, let's go and upgrade the hardware. Let's go and do those kind of things. We want those to be the items. We don't, or, we want them to, something that's latent, that's unexpected. Great. That's, nobody knew. We did our best. We poked 4 holes in the ground and the rock was in the middle of the 4 holes. It happens. What we don't want to have is mistakes. We want to minimize those mistakes. And as Brian said, knowing a lot of these designers that will go after this project, we know a lot of, we've had jobs with HKT. We've had jobs with Dorad Whittier. We've had jobs with them. We know where the change orders came up on those jobs, on those projects. So those are the first details we check on your project.
And we'll track those change orders as we go through the project. And, there may be some things that you may want as an owner upgrade, but we might have to hold back on it until we get farther into the project. And we're not shy about saying, let's hold on that so that we don't get ourselves into trouble towards the end of the job.
Thank you. Great presentation again. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, Kevin Kyra, Wilmington Board of Selectmen. Quick question. I know you probably have already answered it. Describe a difficult situation you had in a project and how you resolved the issues. And I'm guessing you mentioned the ledge issue. And then one other quick question I want to throw in.
Sure.
Design is unique to the project or similar to others? It seems as if, as you're making the presentation, that the designers you're dealing with seem to be similar, but are they unique to each individual project?
Oh, sure. But just the realm of public, the realm of designers that bid, that submit their RFQ, request for qualifications for municipal projects, there's a finite list of them. And, you do this for 20 years, you see a lot of the same ones. So you get used to working, on the other side of the table of them. So yes, every one of these things they're going for and applying for the job individually, but there are people who design private work and people who design public work. And never the two really cross each other. So we end up having experience with a lot of the folks that design town halls, that design public safety buildings, that design schools. So that's where that history comes from doing multiple projects, for different towns. You end up with the same designers here, every once in a while.
A lot of them specialize.
How about the situation, difficult situation?
Yeah, so I won't use ledge because ledge happens, but what I will use, difficult situation, we talked about it a little bit before, we're not afraid to get, if we have a really underperforming GC or subcontractor, we're not afraid to go and go to the uncomfortable place, talk about finding them in default, talk about the potential termination if we have to, because ultimately, if they've put us in a situation, and Brian had a situation on a school project where they completely terminated and got rid of the GC and had to get a replacement contractor. We've had situations where I've had situations where subs weren't getting paid because the GC was in trouble, and rather than letting that fester and wait and then resulting in a bunch of demands for direct payment that come to Wilmington, and you say, well, wait a minute, I thought everyone was getting paid. We called the bonding company early, had that bonding company representative come in, sit across the table, said, don't send them another check, send it to me. There's a lot of hesitancy to kind of go down that road. On this job I'm thinking of in particular, it was the single best thing to keeping that job on schedule, getting the subs paid, and resolving things. And but the stigma of having to call town council, get the lawyers involved. Yeah, they were involved for a very brief amount of time. So, we're comfortable with that. Having seen 20 plus years of projects, all of us, we know that sometimes those remedies aren't great, but we'll go there if we have to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Jack Holloway.
Yes, it seems Brian has already answered that question in his presentation about the selection of the site. And he went beyond what the question was. So I'm quite pleased with
That's
it.
fine. Very good.
Thank you. Good.
Paul Malorani, would you like to ask number 8? It has to do with it. You're on mute, sir.
Let me fix that. Okay. Describe your firm's past experience working with a town that has multiple projects possibly being developed simultaneously. Wilmington's in a situation where we're trying to develop a senior center and a town hall, school administration building. Specifically, the potential of multiple projects competing for the same site or sites. How would you deal with that?
Paul, it's a great question. You know, again, as I said, we've had some recent history with that happening in Ashland. Foxboro had a number of projects going on at the same time. Ultimately, it's about communication. You know, ultimately, we want to make sure that, you know, we are in the room with P3 and the designer that's chosen to do that project, just to collaborate and say, look, you know, we're working together here. You know, there's no your site, my site kind of thing. If the goal is to really get this, you know, these two buildings on one site, then that becomes, to Brian's point, when we set up the, you know, the criteria, site selection is, okay, so what's the program for the senior center? It's, just throw numbers out there, 8,000 square feet. Yours is 40,000+ square feet. All right, so are we talking about a 2-story building? Okay, that's 20. So 20 plus 20 on in a second story. You know, okay, so we're looking at 28,000, and then it becomes a collaborative effort to say, okay, can the site work? You know, and you kind of get the benefit of 2 design teams looking at it and not just one person's opinion. You know, you're going to have 2 civil engineers. Again, throwing, you know, you say, oh no, 2 design teams. Happens all the time, you know, happens all the time with abutting projects. And it's just about communication. And what I would suggest in a job like this is that we have periodic joint meetings, you know, with the building committee, so that we bring up those issues. And, you know, if we're on the same time track, that's even better as well, so that we can say, okay, you've looked at this, we've looked at this. Here's why this site works for town hall. Here's why maybe it's not so great for the seniors, you know, and, you know, we can have that discussion and really work with them to make sure that, you know, that it works, that it's a viable solution. And if ultimately we decide, you know, you decide that, okay, 2 sites, great, no harm, no foul. But if we're together for the long haul. So good that we've had that good foundation established where we can work together, set up, you know, procedures where how we work to you and report to you as the building committee. And yeah, while there'll be separate jobs and separate GCs, you know, maybe our meetings are joint for moving forward, and that can work, you know, that can work just fine.
Thanks, John.
All right, well, thank you very much. And with that, I think we've run out of time. The next question, I think you've answered already. It had to do with the architects and design. So unless anybody from the committee has anything in particular they'd like to ask.
Hey, can I ask one question?
Go ahead, Paul.
Early on in your presentation, you mentioned, I think it was Cohasset, that the project failed at town meeting, but then you came in and you got it to go through. Could you just briefly explain what you did differently to get it through?
To be clear, it hasn't gone through yet. But what I think happened is that the design kind of got away from itself, and the project became bigger and had more square footage than it necessarily needed. And there wasn't a whole lot of communication going on with community, Board of Selectmen. There were some changes with the administration. And when the job went out to the street, instead of the town being aware of what had been going on, the response was, we don't need all that square footage. And this thing had been schematic designed already, and a number had been attached to it. So instead of vetting it along the way, for whatever reason, it wasn't. And then there became a real big push. We don't need this, and it's too much. And ultimately, the process that we've gone through recently, I'm going to bet really hasn't come up with that much of a different program but it was so iterative and there was so much feedback back and forth. Everybody feels a whole lot better about it, from the building committee right through the selectmen, even to finance, to say, yeah, and we're waiting for the schematic design cost to come in right now. So we'll see what happens when the price comes in. But so far, it's been, by all accounts of the administration at Town Hall, it's been like night and day, and everybody feels so much more bought into the process right now. And as I talked about earlier, if you can get that buy-in and everyone believes in it, then you're all proponents. And the people that hear about it are all proponents. And now everyone's like, yeah, this is a great idea. Whereas 2-3 years ago, it wasn't a great idea, and it got shot down and failed miserably. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right. With that being said, John, Stephen, Larry, Brian, great presentation, a lot of good information. If nobody else has anything, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate
For
it.
the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, so we have a few minutes before our next one, but as you can see, they went a little longer. I mean, but they answered a lot of our questions that we were going to ask. So either they're well informed or we have some really good questions. So I think that went pretty well. I'll try not to let them run too long on the next one. But everybody want to take a few minutes and then they can come back.
Isn't that doing it?
Hey, John, are you there? O'Neill? Getting the tour of the house.
What's for dinner?
Yeah.
Jack, just don't take us in the bathroom.
Blaze. Oh. John O'Neill, do we have all the Collier's members present?
I see one individual in the waiting room right now. My understanding that there might be two more.
Which one's there? Is that Ken?
It is. Is it all right to let them in, George?
Yep, you can let them in. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Ken, is just you and Phil tonight?
Adam should be joining us momentarily. Yep, there he is.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Good to see
Thank
you
you.
all.
Good to see you all again.
Same here. All right, as before, we do, the committee has a list of questions they'd like to ask. So we're going to let you go through your presentation. And if it goes too long, we're going to cut you short so we have some time to ask our questions.
Sure.
We'll go through a roll call of the members of the committee. My name is George Hooper. I'm the chairman of this committee. John Doherty,
Finance Committee.
Jack Holloway, Permanent Building Committee. Diane,
Diane Allen, Permanent Building Committee.
Kevin,
Kevin Kyra, member of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. Welcome.
Paul
Paul
Malorani,
Paul, there's two Pauls here. Paul Malorani, Permanent Building Committee.
and Paul Ruggiero.
And here.
He has an
Mute.
issue with
Mute
mute.
Paul.
Keep muting myself. Paul Ruggiero, Wilmington Public Schools.
All right, well, it being 7:45, Ken, you want to start your presentation?
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen and we can get going. So thank you all again for allowing us to come and present our team and our experience on this very important project. We're extremely excited to be here. We are Collier's project leaders. Some of the key personnel that we've assembled for this project, you've seen these this lineup before. Myself as Senior Director Ken Guyette, I'll be supported by Phil Palumbo, Senior Project Manager. Phil.
Hi, y'all. Good to be here.
Adam D'Alessio will also be assisting us, and Adam will be assisting us as the project manager. Adam.
Thanks again, Phil. Ken, I'm sorry. It's good seeing everybody again. Thanks for having us.
Great. In addition to the core team that you see here, Frank Baldino will be assisting us. He is our Director of Commissioning and Energy Services with Collier's Project Leaders. He's going to be helping us out on the mechanical, electrical, plumbing support side of things, assisting us with design reviews and during the feasibility study and also during the design phases, and eventually during construction phase as part of that MEP support as well, in the event that any MEP items that come up that need his expertise, we'll bring him in and leverage him as much as we can. Tao Nguyen, who you see on here as well, she's our financial monitoring and reporting analyst. She's the one that makes sure that we are up to speed and up to date with all of our finances and making sure that those are readily available so that at a moment's notice, we can be able to present those to the committee and give you a snapshot of where you are financially at all times. So as we move into the next slide, again, we have a tremendous amount of similar experience with this type of project. We've done a lot of work in the Commonwealth, a lot of public work in the Commonwealth. In addition to the team that you just saw on the previous slide, we have well over 120 professionals in-house, ranging from former architects, former engineers, building owners, building managers. We've essentially done it all throughout the ranks of our firm, and we're able to leverage that experience on this project as needed to be able to assist us. As you can see from the map of the Commonwealth, all the little yellow dots are our projects, and the two red markers are where our offices are located, with Wilmington being located with the blue marker. So some of our similar experience, and as we move to the next slide, I'm going to turn things over to Phil and Adam, who will talk to you a little bit more about our recent relevant experience. Phil.
Thanks, Ken. So like Ken mentioned, a few projects here that we think are relative and comparable to the Wilmington Town Hall project. So upper left of the slide is the Fitchburg City Hall campus project in the city of Fitchburg. That is currently in construction closeout, so punch list and furniture install. We were hired as the OPMs all the way from designer selection through closeout. Building size on this one, so this is actually the existing city hall. It was a historical building, completely gutted and renovated. Square footage on that building is right around 53,000 square feet, and total project budget was right around $23 million. Unique aspect of this project, actually, about 8 years ago, the building department in Fitchburg deemed this building unsafe, hence the start of the need for the project. They actually kicked all the departments out. They had to get swing space further down in the city. And then a few years ago, they got the project funding going, and we executed the project. A very successful project, got through construction during the heart of COVID. So they're extremely happy with that project. Lower left of the slide is the Somerville Public Safety Facility located in the city of Somerville. Again, hired from designer selection through closeout. We're currently heading out of the feasibility study phase on this one. Total estimated building size on this one is right around 77,000 square feet with a total project budget of $50 million. Unique aspect of this job, when we were initially hired, the framework for the project was it was going to be a police station headquarters with fire substation accommodations. They were going to be replacing one of the fire substations in the city. As we worked our way through the feasibility study, going through building programming, space options, et cetera, it was determined that the best option for the project was actually to do full police station headquarters and full fire station headquarters. So little adjustment during feasibility study on that one. With that, I'll hand it over to Adam, and he'll get into these Long Meadow projects.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so there's two Long Meadow projects that currently working on, and actually they're both pretty close to finishing up here. We're kind of working on finish up, same thing as some punch list items, moving some furniture over on both projects. So in the top right-hand corner is the Long Meadow new public works facility. This is a brand new structure, ground up, a brand new site. The existing building for the DPW was built in 1931. In very rough shape. They couldn't keep their equipment inside. Just they didn't have the right lift. They didn't have the right equipment they needed to actually run a proper DPW in town. So this facility was much needed. This is about a $22 million project, about 45,000 square feet. So challenge that we ran into at the beginning of this project was some soil conditions. We hit some asbestos that was unforeseen on the project. So we worked with, the local authorities, to remedy the situation, come up with the different options, the most cost-effective ways to kind of dispose of this material. So we were able to get through that and get through construction, and it's been a very successful project. On the lower right is the Long Meadow New Adult Center. This project, again, is near completion. It's a $14 million project, about 26,000 square feet. This was designed by Catlin Architects, and again, it's been a very successful project. They went through a bunch of different site selection process with this, and they ultimately ended up on the same park that the existing center is in. So we had to work through, there's a day school program there, there's a public pool, there's a public park. So a lot of coordination between all these different aspects that are going on in this project, coordination-wise, that we had to kind of really make sure that logistically we were set up for at the beginning of this project. But again, everything went successful, and it's been a great project. So thank you.
So on this slide, just want to step through some project understanding bullet points we put together through studying the project. So in terms of both of the existing buildings, town hall and school admin building, we understand both seem to be undersized for the programs they serve. And both buildings seem to have mechanical, electrical, plumbing issues, as well as some accessibility issues. We understand a couple of years ago, the town went through a town master plan where for this project, it felt like maybe the most efficient way to lay out this project is to do a single building around 43,000 square feet to serve both of the town hall and school admin program. We understand our very first task will be to guide the town through the designer selection process. Massive, important process of this, making sure we have a design team that has the experience and competence to execute this project the way it needs to be executed. And then from there, from designer selection, do that site selection process, create that site evaluation matrix. We understand in the OPM RFS, there were 4 sites listed. They happen to be the same sites listed in the senior center OPM RFS. So that's going to be a key to understand, okay, is this site might be good for the town hall, but is it good for the school admin? And all those conversations, and part of that will be communicating with the senior center project as you put in the RFS, because whichever project picks which site, it might affect the other project and so on. And we got plenty of experience with that. We dealt with that in the Hadley Senior Center project, communicating with the Hadley Library project. So it's a challenge we're experienced in, and we would look forward to. And we understand the initial contract with the awarded OPM would be initially a feasibility study schematic design contract that could potentially get amended to go through the rest of design, bidding, and construction. So on this side, community outreach, I feel like we presented this at the senior center interview. We think this is huge in terms of projects like this, where we're going to be going out to taxpayers requesting their yes vote to fund this project, right? So, early and often we want to go out to them. We want to, show them the steps we're taking to get the right site selected for the project. Show them the reason, initially the reason for the need for the project. And then as we're going through design, keeping them informed on how things are being laid out, et cetera, et cetera. We want them, besides being knowledgeable of the project, we want them to feel like they have a stage to speak to us. They can ask us questions, issue their concerns and comments, so on. So when we're at that ballot vote, they feel like they've been heard and help get us best set up to get a yes vote. Some of the images on the slide here are from the Dover Community Center project in terms of how we're reaching out to that community, during the COVID stage where it's hard to do big gatherings. So that's a Zoom public forum. We've had now 2 or 3 on that project, and both have been very, very successful. Over 200 community members on them, and they run pretty smoothly. And then a couple other images are online surveys we do just to get feedback from the community on different design aspects and so on. And we would also bring on a marketing department employee to help with a town employee to create a Facebook project page. That way we can kind of periodically put updates on that Facebook page so people can kind of be in the know as we go through design. Again, ultimately do the best we can to set us up to get a yes vote. So when we're providing our services, we like to focus on cost, quality, and schedule. So cost control initially during design. So the first step is let's create the appropriate total project budget for this project. So you're going to have your hard costs, your construction costs, and then you'll have your soft costs. So we'll ultimately put together the most appropriate total project budget for this project. We'll get the owner blessing on it, and that'll be our budget Bible from start to finish. And then at the 3 phases of design, we'll do the estimate reconciliation process. That'll be Collier's tool to help make sure the design team's designing to the construction budget, as well as it'll help us understand values of scopes so we can create the most bang for our buck in these bid docs. So maybe a PV array is wanted, but it doesn't make sense to do it in the base bid, so maybe that's add alternate 1, and so on and so on. Financial tracking and management, that's going to be a process that we deal with from start of the project to the end. Essentially, we'll be responsible on reviewing all project-related invoices, making sure all the vendors are billing to contract terms and work complete, and we'll process those invoices with the town, all along plugging them into our total project budget, communicating with the town to make sure everything's reconciling with the town ledger. Quality control during design, Kent brought up our in-house MEP commissioning team. It'll be at this point where, besides myself and Adam doing design reviews, we'll have an MEP commissioning agent doing design reviews of each of the 3 phases of design. That way we know we're doing the best we can to create the tightest drawings and specs possible to help limit design-related change orders during construction. Construction logistics, essentially with that is it's at this point in design where we started thinking, okay, how is this site going to get constructed? How is this building going to get constructed as it relates to the site it's at, the abutters, and so on. That way, if there are any unique construction logistics scopes that need to be owned in the bid docs, we get them in there, whether it's a unique construction fencing layout, construction gate locations, and so on and so on. Design bid build versus CM at risk, very project specific topic, but it'll be at this point in design where we go through the steps, the pros and cons with you all to help guide you all to the appropriate way to go for the bid method for this project. And then managing the bidding process. Essentially, that's going to start with us creating a bid schedule. So we're going to start advertising on this date, have our pre-bid conference on this date, drawings and specs go live on this date, so on and so on. Create a nice organized schedule that bidders will feel comfortable bidding on. It's not too tight of a schedule, and so on. And ultimately, once we get the bids in, help the town, select the most low responsible bidder. Schedule management during design, we'll create, a big picture bar chart schedule, designer selection 2 months, site selection 1.5 months, schematic design 3 months, and so on. But then a more detailed milestone schedule that has all the different tasks involved in those big picture timeframes. So schematic design estimate reconciliation meeting on this date, meeting with Concom on this date, first public forum on this day. That way, everything's on paper. We can track it because we're going to be responsible for making sure everybody's hitting their dates and we go out to bid when we tell the taxpayers that we're going to go out to bid.
All right. And so during construction phase, we kind of continue that cost, quality, and schedule all the way through this process, all the way through closeout. So what Phil just talked about, we're taking all of those aspects that we did in design, and we're actually bringing them to life here in construction. So that's where, you know, our experience comes into play when we're going to be on site reviewing what's going on, talking to the contractors, talking to the subcontractors, making sure that, you know, you folks are getting what you paid for. Financially, again, we're going to be reviewing all contracts and invoices. We're also going to be going through change orders. Change orders are going to come, and so we go through them pretty detailed, and we want to make sure, one, are these change orders a part of the original scope? There's a lot of change orders that get submitted by a contractor or subcontractor that's already owned in the document. So for us to be able to go back and point out to that and saying, no, you already own this, that's, you know, you need that experience in there for somebody to be able to understand what's owned in that document and be able to push back on the contractor. We're also going to look at man hours and material cost. You know, does it make sense for the change order that they're putting through? You know, so we're also going to, you know, anticipate any potential cost exposures. We're going to be walking the job site. Maybe it's during a job meeting, or maybe there's an RFI, which is a request for information that comes through from one of the contractors that we see as a potential cost exposure. So we're going to keep a running list of contingency log, and, you know, not all these are going to be approved and go against the contingency, but we want to at least have an idea of any possible exposure that might be in the project. And again, we're going to be able to provide financial reporting to the building committee on a regular basis. Let you know where you are financially, what's been paid to date, what's, you know, where we stand on our contingency log. Again, by being on site, we're going to be able to check and make sure that you're getting the highest quality of construction as well. We're going to be taking photos. We're going to be doing daily and weekly and monthly field reports. We're going to be doing an ongoing punch list. We call it a quality issues report that we go through and that I keep on a weekly basis that I send out to the general contractor. I send it out to the architect for issues that I find on site. So I take a photo of it, I document it, I send it off, and I don't close it out until it actually gets corrected by the contractor. So it's just an ongoing list that helps reduce the size of the punch list at the end of the project, which ultimately saves time, saves money. And again, working with the commissioning consultant. Right now, on the two long metal projects that I'm finishing up, we're working, both Colliers is doing a commissioning on both of those projects. So we're working right now to do that, going through all the mechanical systems, making sure that they're working properly, kind of putting them through all their paces to make sure that everything, like I mentioned, is working how it should and how it's designed to work. And again, schedule management during construction. So at the beginning of the project, the contractor is going to submit an overall construction schedule. It's our job to make sure that we hold their feet to the fire on that schedule. We want to make sure that they're hitting their dates. So one of the ways that we do that is during our weekly OAC meetings, which is our owner, architect, and contractor meetings. We require that the GC provide a 2-week look ahead. And so we're going to take that look ahead and we're going to compare it to their overall schedule to make sure that they're hitting those dates. And if they're not hitting those dates, we have a conversation with them, and we require that they then issue a recovery schedule. And so that recovery schedule then would be reviewed by us just to make sure that, again, we want to make sure that we're hitting those dates. There's a lot that's counting on those for the town, for furniture being delivered. So we need to make sure those dates are real. FFE and move management. So again, in my two long metal projects, I'm living this right now. I know Phil mentioned he's living in one of his projects as well. So as Phil mentioned earlier, we have our budget that gets set up initially for FF&E. There's a line item right in our budget. So it's our job to work with the design team, work with you folks to make sure that, one, that we're getting the furniture that we need for this project and for this building, and two, that we're staying on budget. So, it's our job to kind of manage that process with both those entities. We're going to work with the procurement process and working with the vendors to make sure that delivery happens on time, that we work with the GC, that it's coordinated correctly, that the furniture is delivered when the GC is ready. So this really kind of starts at the beginning of construction, that that's why that construction schedule needs to be accurate, and we got to stay on top of them for that because we have a lot of stuff lined up here. We also oversee the delivery of this furniture. We want to make sure that it's being delivered on time. We need to make sure that the proper furniture is being delivered, that it's not damaged. We'll go through, do a punch list of the furniture. Is there any scratches, rips, dings, and work with the vendors to replace anything or fix anything that needs to be. And we also need to make sure that all the furniture is actually in the building and, you know, that we paid for. In the closeout phase. So here, this is, you know, I think one of the most important phases that we have here during construction is the closeout. We have our punch list that I talked about earlier, that we kind of keep an ongoing punch list. And then at the end of the project, the architect comes in, he'll do his punch list. And we want to make sure that all those items are being completed and checked off to, you know, everybody's satisfaction. Training, huge important piece of this is training. You're going to have a brand new facility with all this new technology, new systems, new lighting systems that nobody, you know, nobody's familiar with. So we want to make sure that everybody is trained, that they're filmed, and that way anybody can go back, you know, at a later date and look at these. We want to make sure all the O&M manuals are all turned over to the owner, whether, you know, all the as-built, we want to have those turned over to the owner at the end of the day. We want all these electronic and hard copies turned over. Again, we want to work with the commissioning team to make sure that that commissioning piece is being signed off and everything is running properly and everybody's satisfied with this piece. So again, this is a very important part of the project that we're kind of living right now, and you know, we'll continue to monitor.
All right, thanks, Adam and Phil. So as we come to the conclusion of our presentation, again, we want to thank you and some of the key differentiators on why Colliers. Again, Colliers was formed well over 20 years ago with the sole focus of owner's representation services, whether it's owner's project management or commissioning energy services. And that's what we've been doing exclusively for well over 20 years. And we're here to protect your interests. We are typically and historically a net zero cost to a project. So our fees are typically well surpassed by the savings we bring to a project. And like I spoke of before, we have that multidisciplinary team of well over 120 individuals that have been doing this for years and years. And we'd love to be able to leverage that team for this project and look forward to your questions. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Great presentation again. My question, I'll start it off for the committee. As the OPM, what criteria do you feel is most important in the selection of the OPM for our project?
Phil, you want to take that one?
Sure. And I think I answered this question at the senior center interview. I mean, ultimately, you want an OPM that has experience, similar project experience, right? So, you know.
Can I just interject? I just want the three of you to know that not everyone on this Zoom call was with the other project. So this is our first time hearing it, and I don't want you to shortchange yourself, which I feel you might be doing.
Okay.
Understood.
Sure. Thank you. So ultimately, you want an OPM that has similar project experience. So you have OPM companies that might only focus on municipal work, small municipal work. You might have OPM firms that focus solely on big MSBA work. This is going to be a unique project. It's not going to be a project guided by a MSBA, big state agency. So you want an OPM firm that has done a project of this type that can kind of really take the bull by the horns, assist the town in that designer selection process, and from that point on, be your advocate from start to finish to guide that project to success. I think there's a massive difference between a project that's kind of guided by a big MSBA state agency versus a municipal project like this, where we got to kind of internally do it together. So that's my initial thought.
Okay. Thank you. Paul Ruggiero, number 2.
Thank you. My question you actually answered with the very last slide you put up there. We were talking about what gives you the edge over the competition, but I think your slide kind of addressed that.
Maybe they can elaborate a little bit more. They do have time on it. So.
Yeah, so in addition to that, and that's a great question, Paul, and that's specifically why we put that slide in there, is those key differentiators. In addition to that, we've been able to do some things with some of the other key markets that we serve. one of them being healthcare with a group called HAO, which is an infectious control group that we've been sharing that group. And we've been able to leverage that and actually bring some of that information as part of a series of superintendent roundtables with the Commonwealth superintendents last spring for schools to be able to come up with some 9 key points of discussion and topics for bringing students back to school after COVID. And so we were able to leverage that, and that was pretty unique. And again, we have our commissioning and energy services, which is a unique service that we provide and service that we have in-house that we're able to leverage. So those are just some of the key differentiators, and again, beyond what we talked about in that slide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3, Diane.
Yeah. Hi, Diane Allen here. You talked about this question with regard to, you said, I'm going to discuss about outreach. My question is, please describe your firm's experience with public outreach for getting information out to residents of Wilmington and making a compelling case to obtain support for funding this project. As you know, social media today plays a big role, and most people start with a comment, and from there it just blows up. And I thought I heard that you people could create a Facebook project page, which I think would be extremely helpful, especially for this particular project, the Town Hall School Administration Building. I've already seen some comments on the proposal of going forward with this project. And so in addition to the Facebook project page, is there another means that you would work with the town, maybe on the town's website, to have some outreach where if someone had a particular question that they wanted to ask, you know, you're all busy, you're out in the field and you're doing work and everything. How do you take a call from a resident? Or do you kind of gather a site where they place all these questions and then in the next round put up the what ifs, you know, the questions? I mean, I see a lot of this going on, and then the answer is underneath it. So these questions are being submitted, and then you're submitting answers to these typical questions.
Yeah, so I think I'll start that, and then I'll let Phil finish up. So the first thing I want to talk about when we talk about community outreach is what we like to call the rule of thirds, which basically is you've got a third of the constituency that is going to like the project no matter what, a third that's going to hate them no matter what, and the third in the middle that is to go either way. That's the third you need to focus on. That's the third you need to get out there and ensure that you're getting to that yes vote. One particular example that I will give happens to be Cape Cod Tech, which is located in Harwich. It's a regional technical high school. It's extremely large. It's 228,000 square feet, $140 million project. So it's big, especially for the Cape. There's 12 different towns that send students to that school that have to vote to be able to approve that school. And we were able to go to each and every one of those towns and to be able to provide not only outlets for them to be able to have a opinion to discuss it, whether it was a radio show, whether it was a public forum. We also created a specific project page that was attached to the school website, in addition to a Facebook page that had a series of FAQs on there that were developed after a series of these meetings that we were able to put up there and add to it as we needed to. And ultimately, we came away with a 75% yes vote on that project, 75%, which was huge for that area. Again, it was 12 different towns that had to vote on the same day. So that was a huge success story in and of itself. So we were able to take that and leverage that on all of our projects and kind of do the same thing. Again, not every size fits all. We want to be able to provide a kit of parts that we can use and be able to use on particular situations to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. When Phil talked about that particular employee, we have people that are actually monitoring Facebook, because you're absolutely right, Diane. one person gets that negative comment out there, it can be like a feeding frenzy for sharks, and it's really can be very, very bad very, very quickly. So it's important that we have people, and again, it's not necessarily the project manager that's the boots on the ground, but it's people that have this experience with marketing and social media that can go on there, identify the negative comments, and respond immediately to those negative comments, putting the correct information out there, so at least it squashes it as quickly as possible so it doesn't spread. That's our intent, is to try to get as much right information out there. And then it's important that we tell the committee and talk to the committee about what the grocery store saying is going to be when we're out of the grocery store together, and we see somebody, a constituent, comes and asks us, what's that good story that we're going to tell everybody about this project to ultimately get everybody to yes. And that's really, it's a big part of our focus. It's one of the multiple things that we're managing and working on as we're going through these initial phases to get to that yes vote, and it's extremely important. So we take it very, very seriously. Phil, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just to go to Diane's specific question of like, yeah, how do you field, different questions or comments that come in sporadically. So on the Dover Community Center project, we have a project email address. So that any emails that go to that email address, we have on the building committee, a community outreach liaison. She's a building committee member for the project. She collects all the emails. She'll get them over to myself and the architect. And you had mentioned FAQs. We'll create an FAQ, and that'll get posted on the project website. And that'll be our way to, one, show the different taxpayers that didn't know that question was asked, that the question was asked, and what's the answer to it. As well as, when we actually need to seek out answers and information, we'll do online surveys, to collect feedback from the community that way. And Zoom public forums like this. So there's avenues that you can take to make sure you get that info.
Thank you very much. Appreciate both your answers. Thank you.
John Doherty.
I'm John Doherty. I have a two-part question on this time. Describe some of the more common and some of the more serious mistakes that occur during the planning stages and the cost estimating process. Explain the procedures or approach that your firm has in place to eliminate these issues.
Yeah, I'll take this one, guys, and then you can chime in. I think one of the big ones that we've been able to have a lessons learned on is the idea of the architect estimating the project and that being the golden rule going forward. I think what we've been able to realize quite often is that the best way to go about it is to have the architect have their estimator estimate the project and the owner have another estimator to estimate the project, and then those two estimates are reconciled. Because oftentimes there's a lot of miscues between the architect and the estimator that come out during that reconciliation process, and we're able to really define the scope much, much clearer during that process. And it's almost like the architect and his estimator can almost speak in shorthand, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the documents. And this is where that reconciliation process really, really helps really clearly define that scope and come up with a cost that's appropriate, that we need to make sure aligns with the budget prior to moving on to the next phase. So that's the key part, is we go through this reconciliation, we don't move on until we make sure that we're on budget. And that's either through value management or whatever we need to do to ensure that we get there prior to going on to that next phase. And by doing that at each of the key design phases, we're ensuring that we're keeping that project on budget and that we're really testing those numbers as it's going through that process up until bid day.
Great, thank you.
Paul Mulroney, number 5.
Hi, guys, welcome back.
Thank you.
I think Adam covered this extensively in the presentation, but my question was about change orders and how do you work to limit them? Is there anything that you want to add to what Adam said during the presentation?
I hate them.
Yeah, we do too.
No.
We don't like them
Unless
either.
we're asking for them, then we want them done cheaply.
Right.
Well, one of the things that and the guys will chime in the same way, I'm sure, is we always look to be firm but fair. There are times where the change order is legitimate. If there's a design error or an omission in the documents that we can't, again, push back, then it's a legitimate change order. Now it's time to ensure that you guys get a cost that's appropriate to it, and they're not trying to gouge the client and trying to gouge you all as the owner. And that's really where the push and pull comes with the contractor to ensure that, you know, we're not trying to take advantage of them, but on the flip side, we want to make sure they're not taking advantage of you as the owner as well. And that's where it becomes a little bit of a dance. And then that's ultimately the fun that we tend to have during these OAC meetings at times, and during our cost subcommittee meetings, where we're having that conversation back and forth and going back. But there's so much discussion that happens well before the building committee or the cost subcommittee even see the change order. It's amazing how much back and forth has to happen prior to getting to that point. So we are definitely always pushing back on the contractors, but we try to be fair about it, because we don't want an adversarial relationship that's just going to lead to further messes down the road. We want to make sure that being firm but fair has always worked for us in the past. And, you know, again, ultimately trying to get the tightest document set out there and going through those design reviews at each phase of the design has helped reduce those types of change orders that become very painful for us out in the field.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I have a question. Can you describe a difficult situation you've had on a project and how you resolved the issues to move the project forward?
Boy, can I. No, I think all of us have had issues. I can speak to one specifically, and then Adam and Phil, if you guys want to chime in too, that's fine. It happens to be a project that we did up in North Adams. It was the Cold Grove Elementary School. It was a K-7 elementary school. It was actually basically a gut renovation to an existing 1911 high school up there in North Adams. The low bidder happened to be a firm out of Connecticut. So right there, that threw up red flags. A Connecticut firm doing MSBA work is not unheard of, but especially when the project is in the northwestern corner of the state, it tends to be, you know, a little bit of a concern. And sure enough, logistically, you know, while North Adams is part of the Commonwealth, it might as well be on an island unto its own, because getting over that mountain and logistically getting pieces of materials and labor out there is very difficult. And they ended up running behind schedule fairly quickly. And one of the things that was a saving grace for us is the contracts that we've been able to develop over the years, and all the scar tissue that we've had over the years with dealing with these types of situations had allowed us to build a contract that was very, very strong regarding schedule, regarding recovery schedules, regarding all the things that they need to do to ensure contractually that they got themselves back in line. And we were able to push back on them and show them and demonstrate to them contractually where they were obligated to bring this thing back in line. And ultimately they did. It was a struggle for quite some time though, trying to get them to see the light and see the contract language that they had signed, but we did end up getting them to that point. Phil, Adam?
Yeah, I'll add a couple. So there's a couple scopes of work that are pretty common for a contractor to do the best they can to take advantage of an owner. So you have hazmat, asbestos abatement, and then you have unsuitable soils. So I can't tell you how many projects I've worked on that we owned, you know, X amount of unsuitable soils to be replaced with suitable soils. So on that project, I would make sure the geotech engineer was on site during foundation excavation, monitoring and making sure the unsuitables that we owned was what was removed, et cetera, et cetera. I can't tell you how many times that, you know, the GC would submit a proposal change order of some ungodly dollar amount where the geotech engineer said to me, Phil, they removed, you know, maybe 10 yards above and beyond what was owned, or so on and so on. So that scope of work is something where we make sure up front we have our geotech engineer on site. So when that unfair and unreasonable proposal change order is submitted, we can combat it right away. And same goes for asbestos abatement. When we have our hygienist on site every day, we want to make sure that person is doing a good job truly tracking the work that's happening as it relates to what's owned in the specs, because that's another scope of work that you own X amount of linear feet of pipe insulation or X amount of whatever it might be, abatement wise. And we got to make sure that that person we're paying to monitor that abatement work is tracking those quantities. So when that unfair and unreasonable proposal change order comes in, we can combat that right away and show them what we're tracking in the field. So those are two scopes that I think of in terms of problems that can come up during construction.
Good. All right, Jack Holloway, number 7. John O'Neill, can you unmute his mic?
Unmute. There you go.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yep. Okay, one of the most important decisions to be made in the site selection for the new town hall and the school administration building. How would you evaluate site selection criteria and help us reach a consensus on the best location?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been fairly successful in utilizing in the past is what we call it. It's kind of a decision matrix, and what we've been able to do, and I'll go back to the Cape Cod Tech project, which had several similar options that needed to be weighted by the committee to come up with the preferred solution. And one of the things we were actually able to do, which was at the time kind of a new technology where it's not so much now, we were able to do a SurveyMonkey survey, an online survey, right from where they were sitting in the building committee meeting. There's 24 members sitting around the table, each had their own Chromebook, and we went through the options, and there's a list of weighted criteria on the left-hand side, and there's a list of all the options on the top. And as we're going through, they're doing the survey telling us exactly what their preferred solution or their preferred version of this project is. And we end up getting this heat map as a result of that survey that shows each option, and it's in variations between red to green, and you can see from the output of that spreadsheet which one was green. It was green right down the middle. This option C2 was green. This one was a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green, et cetera, et cetera. So you could see visually immediately what that preferred solution was, and we would do something similar to that here. And it's basically come up with a rated criteria, have the options listed, discuss the criteria, come up with the committee's different considerations on each, and from that be able to develop that preferred option.
Thank
you.
All right, Paul Millerani, number 8.
Hi, it's me again. Describe your firm's approach and past experience in working with a town that may have multiple projects possibly being developed simultaneously. We find ourselves in a unique situation with the senior center now and the town hall project. Specifically, what I'd like to hear is your thoughts on potential of multiple projects competing for a site or a couple of sites.
Phil, that's a softball.
So we got the Hadley Senior Center project, the Hadley Fire Substation project, all at the same time. And then the Hadley Senior Center project was constructed at the other end of a property where the Hadley Library project was constructed at the same time. So got a lot of experience in terms of that, multiple projects at one time. In terms of the Hadley Fire Substation project, in terms of kind of site selection, that was one where it was initially going to be on a town-owned lot, but through analyzing the site, it was deemed maybe not the best site for it. There was a town ball field on it with some playground, so there was some Chapter 97 concerns, there was wetland concerns, so on and so on. So ultimately, the town purchased some privately owned farmland down the street, and that's where we built the fire substation. Hadley Senior Center project and Hadley Library project, when we got hired, it was kind of always understood that somehow, some way, they were going to be constructed on this same long, skinny lot. And that planning board process was a doozy, because ultimately, to have those two buildings on it, the parking required per that bylaw, it was just tough. But we got through it. We had to literally work with that library team. So OPM, architect, civil engineer, from early on design development through the beginning stages of construction documents to get our two projects approved through the planning board. So when we say we got experience with other projects at the same time and kind of making sure each project achieves success for the town, we got that experience. And we love the challenge, and we have no issue communicating with our other OPMs to make sure everybody's on the same page and make sure things can work out for both projects. Because ultimately, the projects are the town project. We have no desire for our project to look better than that. We want all the projects to be successful, and that's only going to happen if we communicate with each other to make sure we're all on the same page and make sure your voices are being heard and make sure you guys know what we know. So yeah, we got experience in it, and we love the challenge.
Great, thank you.
Paul Ruggiero, number 9.
Hi, so if you were hired, one of your tasks was to assist us in hiring an architectural firm for the feasibility and schematic design phases. What experience or criteria should we be looking for in an architectural firm to perform those duties?
So go ahead.
So, well, similar to what Ken mentioned in terms of creating an evaluation matrix, we would work with the committee. So a lot of times what a project will do, you have your building committee, and then you'll have a subcommittee, a designer selection subcommittee. So if the building committee wants to go that route, we've worked on projects where the building committee, all of them said, no, we are the full designer selection subcommittee. That's fine too. But ultimately, what we would do is we would start the conversation. We would provide kind of evaluation matrices or criteria that we've utilized on past projects, past similar projects. So, past similar project experience within the past 10 years. That's, that can be weighted up to 10 points. References from past similar projects, that's another criteria, and so on and so on. But ultimately, we would come to that meeting with criteria points that we've used on past similar projects. But the truth is, we would want to hear from the committee, because you guys know the town a lot better than we do. We want to hear from you what you guys felt would be different criteria points that would make sense for the designer for this project, so we can get those in that evaluation matrix. So ultimately, there's a consensus to the design team that's picked. There's an efficient way gone about it by that evaluation criteria. So that's how we would approach that task.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I don't think you'd have a problem about hearing from our committee. And one thing about Wilmington is we definitely want to give you our opinion and want to make sure you understand exactly what we're talking about. Well, the last question, I don't know if we got to it on the last one, but as Kevin Cairo pointed out, we have some different committee members on this committee. You guys are in this field. This is what you do. Is there anything that we didn't discuss here at this interview that you feel are important and something that we missed or you would like to discuss?
Well, one thing that I would say that I like to ask, which I don't think we again got to at the last interview, was what are your main concerns? What are the committee's main concerns about this project? What keeps you all up at night about this project?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot to it. As you can see, it's a town hall and it's a school admin building. We want the project to turn out to be a great project for the town of Wilmington. We want it to be a functional thing. We want it to stand the test of time. I don't want to speak for any other committee members, but if anybody wants to touch on that.
I will say something, for the past, I've lived in town since 1972, and everybody has always talked about what is the town center of this town. It's been an ongoing discussion. It's referred to in the master plans, and that's something that is in the back of my mind. Does a town hall define a town center somehow, or does the governing center of the town? If it's feasible to incorporate that into the design and plan, I think that's something that's important to me.
That's great.
Just one thing I'd like to say about the team that you've developed is the team that you start with, the team that we're going to finish with. Consistency is important to me, so that halfway through the project we're not starting over with a new person or something. So the people that we're being introduced to tonight, are they the team, and will you be starting the project and ending the project, or is there potential of switches in between?
So Kevin, yeah, that's extremely important to us. Continuity is huge with our projects. We want to ensure that we've got the same team from beginning to end for that very reason. We want to make sure that there's again enough redundancy carried within the team that we can take the ebbs and flows for any sort of vacation time and stuff like that. So we have that created within this team. And yes, it's our intent that this team was going to be the team that carries us through, barring any unforeseen circumstances that are beyond my control. That is the intent, is that we are able to keep this exact team intact.
Thank you.
Any other
George,
questions?
I
Go ahead,
just
Diane.
want to echo what Paul Melorani said, because we went through so many matrix charts during the facilities master plan. And when you talk about them, I never realized the importance of the outcome of them. But when you're in a group and, you know, you have certain things that you're discussing and you attach to it a rating system, it almost shows you how this whole thing comes together. And when you said the importance that you stress about that matrix, because yes, we know our town, and probably we know very well some of the answers on those matrices. And we found through the master facility plan that there wasn't a lot of diversion. Everybody kind of rated it about the same. We all had kind of the same feeling. And, you know, we're going to get one shot at this in a lifetime. They don't build town halls too often.
That's
so
for sure.
we all want to see what's good for this town and leave something that we're all proud of, not just, you know, looking at it as a way to spend tax dollars. So thank you very much for coming in tonight. I did an excellent presentation, and it was very nice, enjoyable seeing you both as a team again.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate it.
Any other input? All right, seeing none. Ken, Phil, Adam, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. We appreciate all the effort you put into it.
Nice job.
Thank you,
Thank
George.
you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year
Happy
to
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do we have any comment or anything before I move on to the next item on the agenda?
Now, just, you know, I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to come off, you know, rude, but I just wanted to make sure, you know, they were seen by the senior center and some of us had not seen them. And I didn't want them to think that
Oh,
they were
no,
just
I think you was
repeating.
spot
So
on.
I think when P3 comes on, I think that should be mentioned to them that there are some new members on this committee, so you're not just giving the same, you know, presentation. And I don't want them to shortchange themselves. You know?
Right. I don't know if they had the assumption that everybody's the same on these, because they're two different committees, obviously, but no, that's still a good point. And I did like your question on the A team versus the B team, what we're going to start out with and what we're going to finish. I thought that was very good.
Yeah, thanks.
John O'Neill, do we have any public joining us tonight?
We do not.
All right, so, well, that being said, if nobody else has anything that they want to discuss, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Do I have a second? And that was John Doherty with the motion.
Yep.
Who seconded? Who seconded the motion?
I'll second it.
That was Paul Marai. All in favor by roll call, George Hooper, aye.
Diane Allen, aye.
John Doherty, aye.
Paul Melorani, aye.
Kevin Kyra.
All right, thank you very much.
Paul Ruggiero, aye.
Oh, yeah. Paul.
You got him on me already, huh?
Got him already.
I thought you were muted, Paul.
You're the center square, Paul. How can we forget you?
All right, thank you very much. And
Thanks,
see
everyone.
you on the
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.